Hello, my friends. Welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to explore the Oregon Trail, a history from beginning to end. So grab yourself a coffee, and let's get into it. The Oregon Trail. Imagine that you are about to begin a journey with your family in a small wagon drawn by a team of oxen. The lure of cheap land and the vast territories of the American Northwest sparked a massive migration that became known as the Oregon Trail. At that time, the United States was expanding westward, and many people were looking for new land to settle on. The Oregon Territory was one such place. It was a vast area of land that included parts of what is now Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana. The Oregon Trail took pioneers through a variety of landscapes, from the rolling hills of Missouri to the Rocky Mountains and the high deserts of eastern Oregon. Most of the trail was on foot or horseback, with some sections being traveled by wagon. The Rocky Mountains were the most challenging part of the journey, and travelers had to be prepared for the rugged terrain and harsh weather conditions, and pioneers had to carefully plan their rations to ensure they had enough to sustain them through the entire trip. The main staples of the pioneer diet were dried meat, such as jerky and dried fruit. These foods were lightweight and easy to store, making them ideal for long-term travel. Other common foods included hard bread, biscuits, and cornmeal. When game was available, pioneers also hunted animals such as deer, antelope, and buffalo. In addition to these foods, pioneers also brought along items such as sugar, coffee, tea, salt, and pepper to add variety to their meals. It was important for pioneers to have a balanced diet to maintain their strength and health throughout the journey. Malnutrition and scurvy were common problems among pioneers, as were other illnesses caused by a lack of proper sanitation and hygiene. Overall, food was an important consideration for pioneers traveling the Oregon Trail. Careful planning and preparation were essential to ensure that travelers had the nutrition they needed to stay healthy and survive the journey. The mountains were also home to dangerous wildlife, such as bears and mountain lions, which could pose a threat to travelers and their supplies. You can also watch videos about the Oregon Trail online. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue producing quality content. We look forward to seeing you in our next video. Finally, once the pioneers had crossed the Rocky Mountains, they entered the Great Basin. The Great Basin was a vast, arid landscape that stretched from the Rocky Mountains to the Sierra Nevada mountains. Travelers had to contend with scorching temperatures and scarce water resources, making it one of the most inhospitable parts of the journey. The Oregon Trail was an epic journey that took pioneers through a variety of landscapes, each with its own unique challenges and landmarks. From the Missouri River to the Rocky Mountains and the Great Basin, each leg of the journey was a test of endurance and resilience. The trail was not well maintained, and travelers had to contend with muddy conditions in the spring and summer, as well as deep snow in the winter. The terrain was also rugged, and travelers often had to ford rivers and streams, climb steep hills, and descend into deep canyons. Despite the challenges posed by the landscape, the pioneers were determined to reach their destination. Many of them had heard stories of the fertile valleys and mild climate of the Willamette Valley in Oregon, and they were eager to start new lives there. The United States claimed all of this territory based on a series of explorations and trading expeditions that had been carried out in the early 1800s. One of the first major landmarks that pioneers encountered was the Missouri River. The Oregon Trail began along the Missouri River in Independence, Missouri. The river was an important source of food and water for travelers, but it was also a dangerous obstacle to overcome. Pioneers often had to ford the river, and the current was strong enough to sweep a person off their feet and drown them. Another important landmark along the Oregon Trail was Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie was a trading post and military fort that was established in 1834. It was located in present-day Wyoming and served as an important stop for travelers on the Oregon Trail. The fort was also the site of several important treaties between the U.S. government and various Native American tribes. Lewis and Clark, for example, had explored the Columbia River as far as the Rocky Mountains between 1804 and 1806, and American fur traders had established several trading posts in the region. By the 1840s, however, the United States was no longer the only power interested in the Oregon Territory. Britain also had its eyes on the prize, and both countries were eager to claim it as their own. This led to a period of tension known as the Oregon Dispute, which lasted from 1821 to 1846. The dispute was eventually resolved with the signing of the Oregon Treaty, which set the border between British and American claims at the 49th parallel. This meant that all of the land north of this line would belong to Britain, while all of the land south of the line would belong to the United States. Despite the tension between Britain and the United States over the Oregon Territory, thousands of Americans continued to move west and settle in the region. In fact, between 1841 and 1869, an estimated 400,000 pioneers traveled the Oregon Trail. This epic journey began in the heart of America and ended more than 2,000 miles away at the mouth of the Columbia River in the modern state of Oregon. The last major trek along the route took place in 1860, when news broke that the Transcontinental Railroad had finally been completed. With the railroad now connecting the east and west coasts of the country, there was no longer any need for an overland trail. Soon thereafter, most of the settlements along the Oregon Trail were abandoned, and the towns that had sprung up to serve travelers on the trail fell into disuse. However, today, visitors can still explore portions of the Oregon Trail and experience for themselves the rugged beauty of the land that so captivated the pioneers. The Oregon Trail is a legendary trail in North American history. It stretches from Missouri to Oregon and was used by thousands of pioneers in the 1800s to travel west. These pioneers were looking for new lives for themselves and their families in the Pacific Northwest. The trail was not an easy one. It was long and dangerous, but the pioneers were determined to make the journey. You have sold everything you own to buy this wagon, but it lacks any form of suspension, meaning that you will feel every jarring bump as it travels painfully slowly at around 2 miles per hour. On a good day, you may cover perhaps 20 miles. You may think that these conditions are insane, but this was the reality for hundreds of thousands of pioneers during the mid-1800s. The Oregon Trail had its beginnings along the Missouri River in the 1840s. As the saying goes, all good things must come to an end, and unfortunately, the Oregon Trail was no exception. Now let's talk about the landscape. Now let's discuss some of the major landmarks along the Oregon Trail. Further along the trail, pioneers encountered the Rocky Mountains. What did the pioneers eat? Food was an essential part of the Oregon Trail journey. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Oregon Trail. If you want to learn more about this topic, I encourage you to do further research.